Single-digit jerseys made their appearance in Lincoln on Tuesday. Some surprises? Maybe. We'll take a look next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
All right, welcome in. Happy Wednesday. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha. But Sherman from The Athletic. Breaking news. Nebraska's defense is dropping their Blackshirts moniker, and they're adopting the single-digit guys on defense. That's the way they were going.
That's very catchy.
It's very catchy. The single-digit guys, they thought a lot about it, and they said, we're going to blow up years and years of tradition and call them the single-digit guys now. Actually, that's not true. But functionally, it is because Nebraska's defense will be full of single-digit jersey numbers.
What's that going to look like?
It'll look really cool, I think.
I think it will.
I wanted to talk about that part, Mitch. It'll look really, really cool when Nebraska's defense walks onto the field for the first time, and basically every guy out there, except for one or two, is going to have a single-digit jersey. I think that'll be awesome.
It is. It is really an identity for the Blackshirts, and that's not something that I would have considered a year ago when we learned about this single-digit tradition that Matt Rule brought to Nebraska, where the 10 toughest players get voted on by their teammates and awarded with these jerseys every year in August. Like, I didn't think you were going to have all of them on the field at one time, basically all of them on the. Jamal Banks just played linebacker on the first play of the year, so 10 of them can be out there. It's that is going to be. It's weird to say that it's intimidating, but it's almost going to be kind of like this intimidating look that the Blackshirts have because the jersey numbers are all in order.
Yeah, and they'll have some swagger to them too. So let's go through them just in case you missed it yesterday. So 5 guys were single-digit jersey guys last year and came back, were able to keep their jerseys. Nash Hutmaker still keeps number 0. Isaac Gifford keeps number 2. John Bullock keeps number 5. Deshaun Singleton keeps number 8. And Ty Robinson keeps number 9. And 5 guys who were single-digit jersey numbers last year left the team, either graduated or ran out of eligibility or left the team. So those 5 new ones are going to be Jamari Butler, who assumes number 1, Marcus Buford, who takes number 3, Jamal Banks, who takes number 4, Tommy Hill, number 6, and Malcolm Hartzog, number 7. So like we said, it's basically all defense. There's only one offensive player on here at all, and that is Jamal Banks, who is the transfer wide receiver from Wake Forest. That's notable in and of itself, Mitch. He takes up a leadership role right away, like right away, and grabs a single-digit jersey number right out of the gate. That's the only guy on this list who hasn't been in the program. I mean, hell, for multiple years.
You're right. You're right.
Every single one of these guys, aside from Banks, has been in the program 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. So that's notable right there.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that because Deshaun Singleton and Tommy Hill, they did come as transfers. Everyone else came to Nebraska out of high school, and this is the 3rd year for both Singleton and Tommy Hill. So you see how retention leads to leadership. Retention spawns leadership, and yet another reminder of the process that Matt Rule has undertaken and his objective to keep players in the program and what that can do when they've been around for a few years. Jamal Banks is a special case because not many players enter the program and have the things said about them right out of the gate, like Jamal Banks did in January. This was a guy who came in, and Nebraska gets after it with the mat drills and some of the offseason conditioning stuff that happens early in the winter. And often you hear about players coming in, whether it's like Stephon Thompson here this offseason, or Micah Mazzccua, who we'll talk about later in the show, this offseason, or like a Sire Wright who comes in the summer, and you hear about this adjustment period that they have where they have to understand the standard that what Nebraska expects. And Nebraska's pretty bold in saying, even about a guy who came from USC and Sire Wright, like, we do it differently here than the way he was used to. That was not the narrative with Jamal Banks. Jamal Banks came in from Wake Forest. He was raising the level. He was dragging teammates with him last winter. So I think he earned this single digit, not so much in camp this month, but for what happened when he got here last winter through the spring and summer.
Well, and then I think the next thing we talk about with single digit numbers is maybe a bunch of questions about why some people didn't get them, maybe. Right. And I think those questions are pretty easily answerable. You might think that the quarterback just automatically should get one. The quarterback did have one last year. That didn't necessarily work out for Nebraska. But as you guys know, Nebraska hasn't announced its starting quarterback yet. They might today. They might have by the time you're watching this. I'm not sure. But as of the recording of this podcast at 8:00 on Wednesday morning, they haven't. And so that it's no surprise to me that Dylan Raiola doesn't get a single digit jersey number. But make no mistake about it, that guy has a voice and he's a leader. I wouldn't read anything into him not having a single digit jersey.
He's a freshman, and it's unusual in this system for freshmen to get the jersey. It's happened under Matt Rule. I think it happened at Temple. I've heard him talk about it. But this is not the kind of team with the makeup that this team has. A lot of older players and a lot of strong personalities and strong leaders among the older players, where you would expect a freshman to get it. I still looked right away to see who was wearing number 1 when I saw the picture as I walked out of. They released this right after we got done with media availability. Got to talk to Ed Foley and Micah Mazzccua, Brian Buschini, Turner Corcoran on Tuesday, and right as that wrapped up and the media were walking out of the Hawks Championship Center, that's when the tweet from Nebraska dropped with the 10, and my eyes immediately went to number 1. Like, okay, who's got number 1? And I wanted to see if it was Dylan, because we might have been getting more than just an announcement on the 10 with that tweet. It could have been the way that the quarterback decision was unveiled, but alas, it was Jamari Butler. So the whole defensive line and the whole secondary is in this group. I think that's also a takeaway, something that's notable from the 10.
Mitch, maybe more about this. I mean, last year Nebraska had a situation with Ethan Piper where he was voted a single-digit jersey guy, but obviously offensive linemen are not allowed to wear single-digit jersey numbers in games. As far as I know, there were not any offensive linemen selected this year. Is this correct?
Well, I think that came out last year after the fact. Like, the jerseys had been announced, and I believe Rule added that like as a postscript in an interview, whether it was like he's going to be on the Husker Sports Network coaches show tonight. The first it's the first of the weekly shows that occur through the football season, and we may hear him drop news about an offensive lineman who got an honorary single digit and can't wear it on the field. I could see that going to Ben Scott or Bryce Benhart or Turner Corcoran, or maybe it's just a situation where you have 3 of them, so there wasn't anyone who got an overwhelming number of votes.
What's funny? Like, I think oftentimes, I don't know that this is always the case, but offensive linemen's leadership, I don't want to say it's limited to the offensive line room, but there's a lot of times where the offensive line on a football team is just kind of a little bit off on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They're the biggest guys. They approach football in such a vastly different way than everybody else. Like, they kind of are just in their own space. So it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if Nebraska did not have an offensive lineman who accrued the votes necessary to warrant a single digit number. Obviously, they're not going to get it anyway because they can't. But that's just kind of how anytime I've ever been around a football team, that's always how it's been. It's interesting how that works.
They eat differently. They train differently. They sit probably in their own space on the bus or the plane because they take up more room and need like a whole bench to themselves. So, yeah, I mean, well respected within the team, the offensive line, but it's not who everyone else is hanging out with or necessarily looking to for like inspiration to get through a game. Now, last year with Ethan Piper, it was a little bit different because Ethan Piper was like that guy on the team who bled Nebraska red. I think that's Isaac Gifford here among this group, and that's his role this year. But there aren't any offensive linemen who are like that. Like Ben Hart's from Minnesota, Ben Scott's from Hawaii, Turner Corcoran's a guy from Lawrence, Kansas. So they didn't grow up on Nebraska football in the same way that Ethan Piper did.
Yeah, Piper's leadership was pretty transcendent. He kind of stuck out amongst those guys from a leadership perspective. So those are a couple of the things. We have a few more thoughts, and then we also are going to talk about some of the things that Ed Foley had to say yesterday as well. Plenty more to come on the Locked On Nebraska podcast here on a Wednesday, but please subscribe and follow on Twitter at Locked On NEB. You can email lockedonneb@gmail.com. I'm sure there will be ample opportunity to do mailbag shows during the season. So lock in for that as well. lockedonneb@gmail.com. We'll be back after this.
Okay, Mitch Sherman here to tell you about Gametime. It's coming up on football season. The pennant races in Major League Baseball are in full swing. It is time to get excited about fall sports around here. And if you've got a game that you'd like to see in person, Gametime is going to make that experience easier because it is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. You want to catch a game to see if your team, maybe it's the Royals, are going to make a run at the wild card. Maybe they're going to make a run at the American League Central Division. Not quite as excited after Tuesday night and seeing them lose a home game. Got to keep beating up on these bad teams like the Angels, but they can get back on track on Wednesday. That's the great thing about that sport. There's always an opportunity the next day, and there's always an opportunity for you to go to a game the next day. Gametime makes getting tickets faster and easier because prices on the app go down the closer you get to first pitch. So whatever you want to do, whether it's go to a concert, a baseball game, a college football game, if it's a hot ticket, it's there on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, welcome back on this Wednesday. Mitch Sherman of The Athletic. I am here. Connor Happer is with me of Omaha's 1620 The Zone. Connor, you went back to work on Tuesday or was it Monday? Monday. You've been back. Yeah, you've been back a couple of days now. Going to have me on. We're going to talk on your show.
That's right.
Later today. So I'm excited about that. Get to talk to you here.
I've found that I'm a little bit more exhausted after doing the 4 hours now than I was before. Just got to build that stamina back up. But we're working on it.
I had the high school, my daughter's high school, and soon to be my son's high school in another year. The pep rally last night, the fall sports pep rally. So that was fun. Got some food trucks out there.
Nice.
And I got to see the new teams and everybody out on the floor. So good little community event. That's why we're taping this in the morning here on Wednesday instead of our evening schedule. So
back to school stuff is cool, and then it feels like a distant memory in about a couple weeks once you're in the in the heat of it. So that's always good.
High school football, man. This weekend in the state of Nebraska, it's coming up. Maybe we should think about whether we want to talk some high school football and talk about some of the players who are going to be on the field. I'm sure that'll happen, but we're going to need to map that out and start to look at.
Yeah, get out to some games too.
Some of those great matchups we should. Yeah, there's that game I'm really interested in early in the season is that Millard South with all of their Power 5 prospects going down to Arizona to play Basha, the big program from another state. It's always cool to see how these Nebraska programs match up against a program from a place like Phoenix. So I'm going to be watching that one. I don't think it's on TV, but watching to find out what's going on. So
yeah, there's a few
all right.
programs going out of state. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah,
Let's do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this podcast.
Yeah.
So back to the discussion about the single digits that were unveiled at Nebraska. Who could have received a single digit, Connor, but did not on Tuesday? We've talked about the quarterback, about Dylan Raiola, and how that's still an undecided. No, it's not the right word. It's yet to be unveiled situation, and he's a freshman, so it's understandable. But what about other places as we look around the offense or even the defense?
You know, it's funny how this works. It's obviously a leadership thing. But if it was just a leadership thing, then you would figure that some dudes down, who are like fifth on the depth chart and a walk on would probably like pop up just because they're so well respected by their team. It's obviously a lot of things. So it's a leadership thing, but it's also like you kind of have to be a locked in starter
you got to be able to play.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. Like you want your best players to be leaders. So as you look at it, like there's probably not too many guys who missed out on this thing. So almost every single one of them, I'm trying to go through it in my head right now, with the exception of Hartzog and Jamari Butler. Every single one of them are seniors.
Yeah.
Now it's hard to tell how old anybody is anymore.
Marquise Buford is a junior, and Malcolm Hartzog is a junior. Jamari, does he have another year of eligibility after this season? I think, is Jamari listed as a senior? It's senior dominated is the point here, and that's a good point to bring up. And there are a lot of seniors on this team. So as you start to look at some other seniors who could be in this kind of position, I'd go right to Rahmir Johnson. I think Rahmir Johnson is would have been a good candidate for this. And probably what caused him to get fewer votes is that if you're a teammate and you're looking around and you see three running backs who are all strong leaders and all tough guys, this is like a toughness award. Some might vote for Gabe Irvin. Some might vote for Rahmir Johnson. You might have some votes also for Emmett Johnson, who's shown a lot of those traits in the last 6 or 7 games that Nebraska has played. So they split some votes, and I think that might be the key.
The running back party should have nominated Rahmir Johnson and really pushed them as their candidate.
Sure. That's the
convention.
That could be the future of this. Like they right. They bring one player to the front of their position group, and then they can go and campaign and things like that. So, right. Rahmir probably would have been the guy that I would have nominated among the running backs. And then at tight end, there's also a couple older players with Nate Borkercher and Thomas Fidone, and they're very tough in their own way. Also, I could have seen either one of those players getting bestowed with this honor.
You know what? I was looking at some of the juniors and seniors too. And obviously this person is not going to start, but I do think Heinrich Harburg gained a lot of the respect of his teammates a year ago. He was never going to get a single digit jersey probably, just because, the situation, but I do think he has the respect of his teammates. Now I think there's more to it than that, but pretty much every guy in that junior senior class is going to, if you have a year left of eligibility or two, you're either hurt or are going to be a very key piece to what they do this year, which is a really good setup for a successful football team, I think.
And Jamari's a junior, so there's 3 juniors out of the 10.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's a pretty good setup leadership wise. I don't, that kind of exhausts the list, like Ben Hart, Corcoran, and Ben Scott. We talked about the offensive line already, but really nothing crazy as far as snubs on single digit jersey guys.
No, that's everybody else on the offensive side. And on defense, the other starters, you have Mekhi Bayer, who also talked to the media on Tuesday, who's going to start now with Javen Wright being out. Javen Wright would have been a candidate for this, but now he's on the sideline, and it's probably hard to vote for a guy who's out indefinitely. I mean, he can lead in certain ways, but not in every way that they're looking for with these single digits. So Mekhi Bayer is going to start at inside linebacker, and then Jack linebacker is the only other spot that doesn't have a single digit. And we talked on the show Tuesday about the race there between MJ Sherman and Prince Will Umanmielen. How was that?
Good enough.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm interested. That's the one place I'm interested to see who trots out with the Blackshirts with the number one defense next Saturday is that Jack linebacker. So when there's a position race like that, much the same way at running back, it's more difficult for that player to become a single digit.
A couple odds and ends to finish out the show. Coming back on the other side, maybe a note or two on kicker, and a little conversation about another guy who talked to the media yesterday, Micah Mazzccua. So we'll be back with that when we return. But first, a reminder that college football is indeed back, and the Locked On College Football podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 6:00 on Tuesday, which
that was out.
Already happened. So you guys can go check it out. Also, I want to mention one more thing. We have conference previews out as well. You'll be seeing the Big Ten preview featuring myself representing Nebraska popping up onto the YouTube feed at, I believe, 11 o'clock today. So you could check that out. It's on YouTube. It's on Amazon Fire TV. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, I'm going to read this second ad read here. I did the first one. I'll do the second one. Why not? It's got my name on it. So, Mitch Sherman, I am here to tell you about a new sponsor for our show, Ibotta. That's Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies and toys. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per more. That's just the average. You can get more than that. So while other apps give you points that don't amount to much, Ibotta provides cash back, and you can move that cash into your PayPal account. You can move it into your bank account. You can take it as a gift card. Simply add offers in the Ibotta app, upload your receipt, and boom, the money is yours. Save on more than 2,400 brands, more than 1,000 retailers for you to shop at, including your favorite grocery stores. They've got Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just to try it out. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store with the code LOCKEDONCollege.
Okay, let's bring up another offensive lineman who we both believe, Mitch, is set to start. I think it has grown to the point where
Sure.
this guy's going to start. It was a little rocky at first. Micah Mazzccua talked to the media yesterday. We had both individually made the observation that he is a large human being. He has started at an SEC program. He has started at a Big 12 program, and now I believe he's set to start at a Big 10 program. Here is Micah Mazzccua in his first interview since his transfer from Florida, talking about his the beginning of the season here.
I just ain't scared of nobody. I don't really be saying there's good players out there, but I don't really be thinking like, oh, they got to deal with me. That's, you feel me? That's how I feel, and that's the attitude I want our line to have. They got to deal with us. We don't got to deal with them.
They got to deal with us, Mitch. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So I was a little worried that Micah was going to knock over the podium during that time up front. Like I was kind of backing up in my seat, like making a plan that if the podium comes flying at me, I'm going to be able to bail out and not get hit by it. Like he's large, again, to reiterate what you said, and he was leaning on that thing. It could have broke it. It's like a defensive lineman out there. He just wanted to take it out. He has the look for sure, and I think he's got the attitude, and I think he's got some swag to him. As he said, he's not scared of anybody. you can put a defender from USC or Wisconsin in front of that guy, and he's going to have the belief in his mind that that battle is his to win. So
Yeah.
I like that Nebraska has that mentality with someone on its line. Not to say that the others don't bring that, but he has a unique way of, I would say, just kind of being an intimidator when he walks out on the field.
I definitely don't mind that there's one guy on the offensive line who absolutely and definitively has a crazy streak. I mean, he literally tried to fight a guy with a helmet on in a football game last year. That happened. There's video of it. He's chasing him down, holding up his fists, like trying to box him. Like, I don't mind that there's one guy on the offensive line that's like that. So yeah, he's not going to back down from anybody. He's seen it all. And so that's a good thing. And it's a position. It's guard, like you don't think that as a position where, one of your dudes is going to be, but, Nebraska's trying to get some things established on that offensive line. So I think he'll have a positive effect on the people around him.
Interesting. Matt Rule has known, and Ed Foley, the guys who have been with Matt Rule since his time at Baylor and Temple, they've known the Mazzuccas, who are from Philly, for a long time. I mean, Micah is here in his 4th year of college, and he's known Ed Foley and Matt Rule since he was a sophomore in high school when they started recruiting him. And Rule was on his way out at Baylor at that time, and Mazzccua was on his way into college, but Rule still helped with some of his connections in Waco for Mazzccua to end up in Baylor in Waco and start his college career. And then of course he's taken this path to Florida and now to Nebraska. So he kind of understands, I think, a lot of what Matt Rule's trying to do when he pushes the buttons of his players. And he was pushing Micah's button in the spring when he talked about how he had not taken to Nebraska the way that they wanted him to, that he was slow in fitting in with some of the off-season training and camaraderie, that kind of stuff. Micah just wants to play football. I think that's the end of the day takeaway. And as it gets closer to the season, Micah gets more excited about playing football and hitting people.
One other thing, I guess, what did you take away from what Ed Foley had to say yesterday about the kicking situation, which is now something that is really crept up our radar for things that we're watching as we get closer and closer to August 31st, which is 10 days away, by the way. What's the situation with John Hole and Tristan Alvano?
Well, he increased my confidence a bit in John Hole. Ed talked about how John Hole came to the Matt Rule football camp, the specialist camp. He came to a couple of camps. There's one just for kickers and punters, and then he was there for another camp too. And Ed used the word, he was a monster in the workout that Nebraska put him through in that camp. That's what opened their eyes to recruiting John Hole and trying to bring him to Lincoln, back to Lincoln, his hometown, after one season at Iowa Western Community College, where he redshirted last year. So they've seen him do it in a setting where at least they create some kind of pressure moments. It's not like you just saw this kid on film kicking in high school and said, all right, that's what we're going to go after. They've actually watched him do it at Memorial Stadium. I feel a little better about John Hole and what we would expect if he's out there with the pressure kick to make early in the season. But Alvano's just not, they 90% is what they said. He's like, he can cut loose at a level of 90%. So in their eyes, that's not enough. And, I would agree. You need your kicker to be 100%. It's a finely tuned machine. It's a sports car kind of situation.
Oh yeah. That's a really great analogy there, because it's like you can't have anything wrong. I mean, first of all, it's a superstition. Also, like if one thing's wrong, it's maybe like a golf swing, as a sports analogy. Like if one thing's wrong, it's going to screw up the entire thing because you're going to be overcompensating for. So like, yeah, it's not a situation where I want Tristan Alvano kicking field goals in games right now, because if he goes up there and misses it, it'll screw up his confidence even further. So put the guy out there who's healthy and ready to go. And that's the way it seems like it's going for Nebraska right now.
Right. So we thought going into that press conference with Ed Foley that John Hole was likely to be the kicker on August 31st. And I feel even more strongly about that after listening to Foley talk up some of the strengths of John Hole. He also talked about kick returns and punt returns, and we got a pretty good sense that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is like their most steady hand at punt returns. I think the player they feel most comfortable with, but that Ja'Cory Barney, the true freshman, and Emmett Johnson are also back working in that area, and they're not going to be afraid to put any of those three back to return punts.
I think when you are building a depth chart of punt returners or even kick returners, you want to have, a set of guys that you feel like is going to be able to safely accomplish their jobs. And then you want to have another guy or two who might screw something up badly, but might make a gigantic play. And so I think you could put those guys out there depending on which situation you're in returning the punt. And I think it's pretty clear which guy's which. So I think Nebraska wants to make that thing work for them this year. It's got to be better in the return game. They have to make it really a plus for them this year if they want to do what they're trying to do. So we'll see how that goes. But I imagine you'll see both, Barney and IGC returning kicks for punts for Nebraska this year.
Barney's the guy who's going to take one back.
Yep.
He's going to take a kick or a punt back for a touchdown this year.
Ooh,
he's also the guy.
It
is. Yeah, I made a prediction. We should do some predictions. Maybe next week have a prediction show. Like we can each come up with 3 wild predictions. And I can't use that one because I just made it here today and the week before game week. I spoiled it for myself. But yeah, Ja'Cory Barney's going to take a he's going to have a special teams touchdown. But I think there's also going to be moments where you wonder about his judgment. Like where does he catch a punt at the 3? Does he try to take a kickoff and make something out of a return when it would have been better to go with a fair catch and get it at the 25? Those situations are going to come up because he's a true freshman. And this is his first time in these moments in a college football environment. So as he gets older, you expect him to be more sure-handed, someone you can trust. But that guy is IGC at this moment because he's been through everything in college football, multiple injuries, transfers, coming back out of the portal. He's been on the field in big moments. He played in another country when he started his career at Nebraska in the Ireland game. So you really trust, I think, that player, IGC, is going to make the right decisions. On kickoff returns, you take IGC out of the mix and you add Ramir Johnson in with Barney and Emmett Johnson.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of dynamic there. You got your big play guys and you got your all right, let's just make this work for us. All right. So that's it from yesterday. We'll have plenty more. We'll react to some of the things that Matt Rule says tonight on his radio show and plenty other things. We have now a few shows left to come up with a bunch of predictions for our prediction show, which I'm excited about now. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast, plenty of summer topics, and of course, season previews getting ready to go. Week 0 is this weekend, so check out Spencer and the crew over there. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description of this podcast, so you don't even need to search. It's right there. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.